Hello everybody and welcome to part 6 of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 6. So let's get right into it. This chapter is probably one of my least favorite in the entire game, if I'm being honest. Not because it's difficult, in fact, quite the opposite. I think this chapter is more tedious and annoying, but it is a pretty important chapter because there are some new characters we're going to be getting, and there are a lot of items to be got here. Also, next chapter, this is part of why I find this chapter kind of boring, is arguably the most insane chapter in the whole game. That being chapter 7. So be prepared for that. That's going to be, a big deal. But this chapter is a lot more sort of slow going, and we're mostly just here to suck up all the experience and items we can. Um, so yeah, despite me not enjoying it, let's get right into it. So right off the bat, we're going to be getting two new units. So let's talk about them. The first one is Dorothy, who's an archer. Fire Emblem 6 is kind of unique, especially among the GBA games. The other two games, 7 and 8, have a much more, I would say, limited cast. Like, there are two archers in this game, two mercenaries, two mages, all the stuff that, like, there's usually only one of, or maybe two in 7 and 8. It's just a much wider cast. So because of that, we get another archer. But similar to Walt, Dorothy just isn't very good. Archers are not a particularly good class, and her stats just aren't that high. I think she's probably like slightly stronger than him at this stage if you haven't, trained him any levels, but it doesn't really matter much. I did mention earlier that I think archers and bows specifically are better in this game than in some of the other games, and I stand by that, but that has more to do with nomads and especially like snipers we're going to be getting rather than starting archers. Although I will say Dorothy, Walt, and the other archer or bow user we're going to be getting in this chapter are extremely useful, or can be in the next chapter. So I'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, not a very good unit. Would not recommend training her. The other unit we're going to be getting is on the other end of the spectrum, and that's Saul. He is our third healer and arguably the best, although clearing mobility is nice. He starts with good magic. He has a good staff rank. Pretty good stats all around. He'll be the most bulky of the healers. Probably will have the most magic. I think definitely will have the most magic. And like I said, his staff rank is really good. I think he also starts at level 5 or something. So Saul's just an awesome unit. If you're using all three healers, great. If you're using two, I'd probably replace Ellen. But whatever you decide to do, Saul is just an awesome, awesome unit. Not much to say there. So those are our two units we're going to be getting right off the bat. Now, as far as the chapter strategy goes, this is, as I said, a pretty slow chapter. The general strategy, I would say, is handle the enemies like most chapters and go around and get all the chests on the chapter with Chad. So right off the bat, we're going to be having some units coming from the center and then some units coming from the left and the right. Now, from the center, we have two mages in front of some soldiers and some knights. This is a weird position by the enemy, but it's kind of good for us because what we want to do is send out some two-range units to immediately intercept those mages on turn 1. So Marcus is, of course, great at this. If you're training Lance and Allen, they can be great. I guess if you're training Walt for some reason, they can, he can do this. Or Lou, potentially. But yeah, and then on either side, there's not a ton of enemies that are going to be coming. There's a mercenary and then some soldiers behind them. So like Rucker can do well here, Deke can do okay. Either Lance or Allen, depending on which one you set down the middle. Those sort of units, just make sure you're clogging that up. One thing to be cognizant of with these early parts is that some of the soldiers have javelins and they can attack through the wall. So just be a little bit careful once those soldiers do come down to the left and the right, that you're not putting anybody in too much danger. Yeah, after you've dealt with the mages, just deal with the soldiers and the knights. This is where stuff like the Armor Slayer can come in handy, or Lou, because his knights can be a bit annoying. But yeah, once you've dealt with the middle units and the side units, there's not a ton left to do in this chapter except for some reinforcements. So there are, on turn 8, 12, and 16, there are going to be like 4 units coming from the boss. So as you're doing your stuff with Chad, just make sure you're prepared for this and waiting to intercept. On turn 5, Kath is going to be appearing. She's another unique unit. We're not going to be getting her. She's sort of a unique unit in Fire Emblem where you have to talk to her in 3 different chapters before you actually recruit her, which is pretty annoying, but it's kind of nice because we can get some free lockpicks here. So my recommendation here is to basically shove Chad on the bottom right, as far down to the bottom right as you can get, because Kath is going to appear basically in the wall there. And then once she appears, you can steal her vulnerary and her lockpick, and then have Chad go up to the right or the left and start getting the chests. Have Roy go down there. He could talk to Kath, get your first talk in. Then have Roy go up to eventually seize. And then you can either let Kath run around and do what she wants to do, because obviously she doesn't have a lockpick anymore, so she's not going to cause any harm. Or you can have Dorothy or a useless unit go trap her in the corner, because there's basically a line that's just above the closest two chests to you, that once all your units cross, a bunch of units, like 4 units, show up from behind. So you don't have to fight these units, and I usually don't, just because, you know, if you don't have to, why should you? So you can have Dorothy just hang out down there, and they'll never appear. So there are 8 doors that you can open on this chapter, but actually only 5 of them yield anything particularly useful. So all 4 of the side doors are basically necessary to be open. There are 3 chests, 2 chests, and 2 chests in those, and then in the top left, there's Sue, you're going to want to be recruiting. And then above that, the very top left room also has a chest in it, so I'd highly recommend opening that. As far as the top right room and the bottom left and bottom right room, you do not have to open these. The bottom rooms just have reinforcements, there's no chests or anything, and the top right just has units, so I usually don't bother with these. You certainly can, if you just want more experience for your units, I guess, but I already find this chapter to be pretty tedious, so I usually just don't bother with this stuff. But all the other doors do have chests that you want to be getting. So, as far as the rest of the units on the chapter go, we have 2 knights next to the boss. They don't move. This is a great experience for Lou if you are training him. There are 2 mages that will move. The mage that's just inside the boss's room won't move, but the 2 that are next to the boss will, so just be aware of that. Other than that, we're going to be getting Sue. We can recruit her right here. She's a nomad. So Sue's an interesting unit. I like nomads in this game quite a bit. In fact, we're going to be getting a nomad not too far down the road that's extremely good. I do think that there's an interesting thing in this game, right? Because there's a route split later on between Sakai and Ilia. And I would say, generally speaking, people think that Ilia is the place to go, quite a bit easier than Sakai. I would agree with that. I think I usually go Sakai just because I really like nomads. And I wind up training Sue and then the other nomad a lot. But if you want to go Ilia, it can be a little bit dangerous training Sue, just because that route split is determined by the experience that you get for Sue and Shin, who's a nomad we're going to be getting later, or Danny and Tate, or Thea, depending on the translation, depending on who has more experience. So Sue can be kind of an awkward train, just because of that. Same thing with the nomad later. As far as her stats go, she's also not spectacular. She's extremely fast, but also really frail and doesn't have the best strength. Later on in the game, this won't matter too much because she'll have a lot of effective damage. That's why bows are really nice. But for the time being, she's not the strongest, although she will double fast. So I don't know that I necessarily recommend training Sue. I probably wouldn't, because I think going to Ilia, especially for newer players, is a better idea. And especially if you want to train Shin, which I'd recommend, it's going to be even harder to get to Ilia. But if you're already planning on going to Sakai, I think I would recommend training her, because she can be very useful, but she is really frail, so you have to be careful. So anyways, after you recruit Sue, the only thing left to do is kill the boss. The boss here is actually pretty annoying, and this is a great example of where Rucker can shine and why he's so good. This boss is actually like pretty fast, and being on a throne and in conjunction with Fire Emblem 6 hit rates make this guy just like really annoying to fight. 4 defense doesn't seem like a lot, but even Marcus actually doesn't handle this guy particularly well because he doesn't double him. This guy has 12 speed, that's just like really fast. But Rucker can, and Rucker has the killing edge, so I honestly don't know. I would highly recommend using that. Obviously, if you're Lance or Allen, are pretty good at this stage, or maybe as supports, you can use them. But I think Rucker, this is where Rucker and boss killing, really start to shine, because he's definitely the best option for killing this boss, because he is pretty annoying. And yeah, after you've killed the boss, that's the end of the chapter. So this one, surprisingly, was actually a little bit of a longer one. I guess I had more to say about this chapter, but next chapter, as I said, is going to be the really insane one. So just make sure that you're prepared for that, I guess. And we'll be talking about that one next time. So, yeah, as always, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.